quickly, I just also really want to thank Marlena. She encouraged me to give my very first tech talk ever. So, so thank you for that, and encouraging me and guiding me along the way, which is very much appreciated. So once again, talking about jumpstarting your side project idea. So I'm going to cover a few things today for individuals that either you have an idea for a side project and you just haven't started, or if you've always wanted to do a side project and don't maybe have an idea. I really hope that maybe this talk can help and inspire you. So I'm going to be talking about a few things. Like I said, why is it a good idea to start a side project? How to start, how to come up with an idea. Also, some maybe few steps that you can take to get started. And I'm going to be drawing on my own experience, getting my own side project started called Yodi Naturals. I'm going to give a quick intro to what my side project is. Okay, so basically, Yodi Naturals is I envision it to be a platform for Black women with natural hair that are looking for do-it-yourself hair care recipes. I've had this idea for over 2 years now, but I just started it last year, so it's still very new. And it was kind of thanks to the push of some friends who told me, hey, like this is a good idea, get started. So I kind of did that. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what natural hair is hair that looks kind of like mine, kind of like David's cool hair over there. It's hair over there, of course. It's hair with texture that has not been altered by chemical sweeteners in any way. It ranges from wavy to coily with a wide range of variation between the two. It can even be straight. It can be all shapes, sizes, colors, textures, and also hair that looks like that. Okay, so let's start off. Why is it a good idea to start a side project? So for me, really, it was 3 main reasons. One was learning. I feel like at work, I work for a consultancy, so I get to touch a little bit of everything, but I feel like I never really get to see a project from start to finish. So to me, I really wanted to start something where I could start from setting up the DNS, and hosting, all the way to having an actual website, deployed to production, having actual users on the website. Another reason is to support Black Girl Magic. Now, Black Girl Magic was a concept born as a way to celebrate Black women and their beauty and their resilience and power. So I really wanted to create something to highlight that. And then lastly, create. Like I said, at work, I feel like I do a lot of really cool things, but I don't really get to flex a lot of creative skills. I really want to learn more about design. So I figured that having a side project would kind of help me flex some of those skills. And as well as just having something fun to do after work. All right, so we want to start a side project, but what? So my idea actually happened while I was at the hair studio. I was talking to my hairstylist, and she mentioned that my hair was really dry and that she recommended I look at some do-it-yourself hair care recipes using things like honey, for example. And I've heard of do-it-yourself recipes before, but never really for hair care. So I was kind of curious. So of course, I'm like, okay, I want to try this. I go home, go to Google, start doing some research, and quickly realized it was going to be a little harder than I thought. There were a lot of really good resources online, but they were scattered and all over the place. And there was no one centralized place where I could find recipes. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is a really good idea. And hopefully other people will be interested. But even if they're not, I want this. I want this thing to exist. So I decided to create it. So now then I would say for other people, if you're trying to come up with an idea, I would say kind of like me, look at your day-to-day. What are problems that you see? What is something that you wish existed? What is something that your friends wish existed? Keep a journal, write down all these little ideas that you have. And I think really making sure that you have an idea that interests you in some way is really important. Actually, we're going to talk about 3 questions to ask yourself. Now, these questions are not so much about whether this product will be wildly successful. It's more so for the long-term viability for yourself. Is this something that you're going to see through to the end? So the 3 questions are, Would I enjoy working on this? Is it important to me? And could I work on this on a consistent basis? So for the first question, would I enjoy working on this? So in the words of Kimberly Elise, who is a famous actress, she says, I decided to start embracing and wearing my natural hair, but there's only one problem. I didn't know what to do with it or how to style it. Growing up, all I knew was my relaxed, processed hair, so I had to go through this learning phase. And similarly to Kimberly Elise, I feel like I'm still kind of going through this process of learning a little bit more about my hair, and especially about like just do-it-yourself hair care. And I feel like I really want to make this process easier for other individuals that are also interested in doing it and not being overwhelmed like I was when I first started learning about it. Also, I'm just really passionate about Black women and their natural hair and creating a platform, like I said, to celebrate Black girl magic. So second question, is it important to me? So for a lot of people, you just say, it's just hair. Like, why does it matter? Why is it a big deal? And I think for me, it's really, really important because for a lot of us Black women growing up, we're told that we're not beautiful. We're not really represented in the media. It's starting to change now, thankfully. But it really just isn't just here for us. So to me, like I really want to create this thing to showcase Black women and to have a safe space for us to safely empower one another to be who we are, not to have to wear any masks, just like to belong. And then finally, could I work on this on a consistent basis? So if you've established that you have that time somehow, I would say make sure that you prioritize your time. So when I first started this project, it was more so like, oh, I have an hour here, I have 30 minutes here, and let me just kind of do a little bit of Yodi Naturals. But as I realized that I really wanted to work on this and I really wanted to make it something that people can actually use, I realized that that wasn't going to work anymore. I really had to better schedule and say, okay, I'm going to devote 10 hours this week and I'm going to prioritize to make that happen. So kind of in the words of John Maxwell here, he says time management is an oxymoron. Time is beyond our control and the clock keeps ticking regardless of how we lead our lives. Priority management is the answer to maximizing the time that we have. So this is still something that I'm very much working on. Very important. All right, so we've talked about those basics. So let's talk about the first steps that I took and kind of the workflow of what I did to get Yodi Naturals started. All right, so for the initial setup, the first thing I did was my own version of market research. So I talked to family and friends with natural hair. I went to events with women of color with natural hair. And I even at one of the events that I went to, I got up in front of everybody and I explained what I was trying to build. So all of them were super excited about it. They told me to stop talking, not network or socialize, and go sit down and make it happen. So to me, that was a great kind of validation that this is something that other people would want to use as well. The next thing is build your team. So like I said, I talked a lot with friends and family. And when I first started talking about this project, it was really oh, I wish this existed. And a lot of my friends were kind of by year 2, they were really tired of hearing me talk about it. And they're like, okay, we're going to help you make this a reality. So let's get started. So that's kind of how my team kind of came to be. And then the third step is making sure that you check with your work policy, because I know some companies can own your IP even if you work on it after work hours, or you might have to disclose your IP. So just making sure that you have your bases covered. All right, so it's mind mapping session time. So after we kind of started, the basics of setting up Yodi Naturals, we decided that we kind of needed to figure out, the who, the what, the how, the why. So we decided to use a technique called mind mapping, which is just kind of a way to creatively brainstorm your ideas on paper or poster board. So in our case, we got a really bright yellow poster board. So I'm warning you, this is very, very ugly. But this is just to show that things don't have to be beautiful to get started. So we just kind of started writing out and drawing out what we envisioned for our platform. And so there's 3 key things that I'm going to highlight here. So the first thing is trial and error. So this was just kind of further validating for us that, kind of backing up. So for me, a lot of trying to find things that work for my own hair, it's a lot of trial and error. So it's a lot of getting different kinds of products and kind of seeing what works. But unfortunately, products are really, really expensive. and they don't necessarily work for everybody. So, and often you can't return the products. So it's very expensive. So for a lot of us, it's a lot easier just doing it, kind of do it yourself to kind of figure out what works for you. So just as I said, validating that this platform will be something that people would want to use. And just kind of like the center. Another highlight was like at the bottom with the Venn diagram, just kind of highlighting that we want to make sure that this is as beginner friendly as possible. Because like I said, for me starting off, it was very overwhelming. So I want to make sure that for a user coming to my platform, it's something very easy, very intuitive for them to be able to use. And then the third thing, just sisterhood. We're building a community for Black women. And to me, no matter how this platform evolves and changes, that is always the center, building a community for that. Okay, so based on that mind mapping session, we built out some personas and value stories. So personas are just kind of like the intended users of our platform. So the first persona is a Black woman with natural hair already looking for natural hair care recipes. And the value story, also known as a user story, is a person with natural hair. I would like to find natural hair care recipes in one easy to navigate place so that I can save the time and effort it requires to find them otherwise. The second persona is a Black woman with natural hair who creates and has found recipes that work for her, and she wants to share those with others. And the value story is, as a person who creates natural hair care recipes, I would like to share my recipes so that I can help other Black women in their natural hair care journey. So we took, after kind of setting up our mind mapping session, we decided that we kind of needed to talk a little bit more about names. So when I first came up with this idea, I called it Naturalista. I really liked the name, and I felt like it was a name that other people knew, so it would be kind of easy. But a lot of other individuals on my team were kind of worried that while the name meant something to people, like it might be too generic and it might not highlight just kind of how special we think this thing is. So we decided to brainstorm to pick a name. So we took that backside of that really bright yellow poster board and started writing down words that matter. So I wrote down words that mean something to me that are really important in terms of like being a Black woman and having natural hair. So words like identity, words like healthy, words like community, empower, sisterhood, educating others. So we took all these words and phrases and we wrote them at the back of the poster board and started ideating on it. So the result looks like this. So like I said, also really, really ugly, but it worked. So from these words, a lot of discussions started happening. We talked for like an hour about this. So we started bringing up like things that matter to me, my mom's name, my sister's name. We started talking about Fulani words. So as a side note, my family is originally from Senegal in West Africa, and our native language is Fulani. So like my team members have been hearing me like say random Fulani words to them over the years. So they just kind of started writing them down. I don't know what reason. Like Jehed, for example, means let's go. And I'm like, I don't know why this is here, but it's funny. And one word that kind of kept coming back to us was beauty. And one individual that was part of the session, she said she really liked the word beauty because to her, beauty was kind of taking that word back for herself. Because like I said, for Black women with natural hair, like our hair is not really portrayed really well in like professional settings. Like we might be told, oh, you should straighten your hair to be considered acceptable, right? So for her, it was really kind of taking beauty back for herself. So that made me think, like, I like the word beauty too. So then beauty in Fulani is Yodi. So putting it on the board, like I fell in love with being that, Yodi Naturals, like I really liked it. And one of the concerns was, now we're picking a name where people don't necessarily know what it is. But then thinking more about it, it's kind of like we're taking that term for ourselves and we're defining what it means for us. So that's kind of how Yodi Naturals came to be. All right, so we built out our user personas, our user stories. So now we started talking about what our MVP should be for minimum viable product. So a minimum viable product is just kind of this thinnest slice that we can release out for our users to start using. So for me, like I kind of had an idea of what I wanted the platform to look like. And in order for me to kind of come up with the MVP, I thought that it'd be a lot easier for me to visualize it first. So I kind of built out like a sample mock of what I envisioned the like homepage to look like. So this is also not like great, but this was just kind of like a start me learning how to design stuff. So kind of some of the things like that I envision is like as a user, I want to be able to go on the homepage and see all the recipes lined up in some sort of order. I want to be able to search by category, so whether it's a conditioner, a shampoo, deep conditioner. And I haven't built out all the mocks yet, but some of the other things are I want to be able to filter by tags. I want to be, as a user, I want to be able to comment on recipes, favorite recipes. And just like, And then another thing is, as a user, I want to make sure that I don't have to log in unless I want to create a recipe, because the only reason we make you like create an account is if you need to create a recipe for some reason. So those are some of the high level MVP that we have. Other things like post MVP, I really want to open this up to making it, like right now it's really focused on hair, but also like opening it up to like maybe like lotions or body balms or lip balms or something like that. But that's like way in the future after we get this first cut released. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about the technical stack. So the launch page was actually, it was very simple to build. I was very surprised. So we just kind of use React because one of our coworkers was like, I want to learn React. So we're like, okay, cool. Good enough for us. And the other thing is I really wanted to use AWS just because this is a really hot tool that everybody keeps talking about. And I really wanted to learn more about some AWS services. So actually, like I said, it was very simple. There were a lot of really great tutorials. All we had to do was just build the React app locally, take the build directory, push it up to S3, which is just like a storage service, a cloud storage service, and just make your S3 bucket basically configured for website hosting. And like I said, super simple to do, a lot of really great tutorials. So initially, that's kind of what I had. But I quickly became really irritated about every time I navigate to my website, I see that like browser warning saying not secure. I hate that. So I'm like, okay, so clearly I need to add SSL to the mix. So AWS also has a really great service certificate manager where you get free public certificates. And then in order to use SSL, like you do need to assign it to CloudFront distributions. So we had to include CloudFront, which is a CDN, in order to be able to do that. Oh, and I quickly do want to show you what the launch page looks like. So it's very big on this screen right here. But basically, the images, I really wanted to get as like realistic images as I could. So initially it was kind of hard, and I will talk a little bit more about that, being able to find good stock images. But this is using a stock image service called Create Her Stock. Okay. So we're using a lot of icons from Noun Project, which has really, really great icons. And very cheap. The colors look a little bit off on the projector, but for our notification, we are using MailChimp for like building out subscriber lists. And for social media, we're just, to build up a social media presence, we're using Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Okay. So right now we are in process of building out the app. So we're still kind of like deciding something, so some things may change and evolve. But so far, right now, we're using React for our front end and Rails API. And we did actually decide to decouple our front end and our back end because we really want the flexibility to be able to swap things in and out as necessary, which we're probably creating a lot of headaches for ourselves, but we're intentional in that decision. We're using Puma for application server, Nginx for our reverse proxy, Capistrano for just deploying to our remote server, and a lot more AWS. We're going to keep S3 around for possibly logging, EC2 just as a virtual machine for our React and Rails API, and we may still be using the certificate manager in CloudFront, but we're still kind of deciding that. And some additional tools. So we're using GitLab for source code management. GitLab CI for continuous integration, Trello for just like project and task management. We're using Sketch, so you saw me built when I built out the mock. I was using Sketch, which I really liked. It was like I noticed a lot of designers at my company using that product, so I was really, really curious, and I decided that I liked it, so I'm using it. Create her stock, like you saw on the launch page, for stock images, as well as Adobe stock for a lot of like more of the hair care recipe look. Now project for icons, Google Hangouts for team communication, Google Analytics for metrics. We're not really doing much with metrics, but it's there. Name.com for like buying the domain name and DNS and all that, and MailChimp for our like subscriber lists, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Haven't really done too much with social media yet. It's very easy for me to feel very overwhelmed just because like there's just so much to do. So I just kind of are using those accounts and just kind of following other accounts just to kind of start having a social media presence for now. So I have more time to invest into that. All right. So you may have noticed that I've been using a lot of like more like terms that you hear at work, like personas, user stories, and stuff like that. So that kind of asks a question: in our side project, should we be agile? And I say, find what works for you. So for us, we really like the idea of value stories because for me, at the forefront, I always want to make sure that I'm building what the user actually would use. So always keeping that in mind. Of course, user feedback is really important. When we first started the project, we made sure that we got as much feedback as possible. And as we start like releasing slices, we're going to keep integrating that user feedback. Very useful. Simple design, of course, trying to keep things as simple as possible and iterating as you need to. That one is a work in progress for me, and I will briefly talk about that. Test-driven development, refactoring, code standards. Of course, we want to make sure that we're not that we set ourselves up well for the future, and that we're not like embarrassed to show our code to anybody. Continuous integration, continuous delivery. We want to make sure that our master is always green, and that we're cutting out as many manual steps as we can. Kanban board, just to kind of help visualize things. And meetings as needed. So that one is a little different. We're not really doing like stand-ups every morning and like retros and groomings. It's more like as needed, we check in with each other, and like as we need to do like groomings and stuff like that. Just because we don't work on this 8 hours a day, so it's not at that same speed as what you would expect at work. All right, so for me, things that didn't work as well. So I have iterations and sprints up there for now. And the reason it's there is because I think actually it would be really beneficial to do this more in that traditional way, because then we'd be like setting more goals for what we want to accomplish for a certain period of time. But because we're still kind of like figuring things out and we're still like figuring out what our pace is, we decided to not bring that in yet. But that may be something that we bring into the future. Pair programming, I realize this is PairCon, but the reason I have pair programming up there is I pair 8 hours a day at work. And when I go home at night, I do not want to pair with anybody. I just want to relax. I want to spend my own time doing my research and just kind of learning on my own. And also, like, it's really hard to coordinate different schedules and doing all that. But like, really, we do it as needed. So if I get stuck on something, then I will totally ask somebody, hey, can you pair with me on this or something like that. But definitely not in a traditional way. And then finally, metrics, because I just don't care about metrics right now. But in the future, but I don't care. All right, so some hurdles I faced. Stock photos were really hard. It was really hard to find stock photos of like the certain images I was looking for like black women with natural hair. After a lot of searching, I was able to eventually come across Create Her Stock and some other stock image services that features more like women of color type thing. But that was very difficult. Design, because I'm not a designer at all. And I also like don't really know how to let things go sometimes. So I'm like, this must look perfect. And so kind of learning, trying to learn how to do that better. Also DNS and SSL. And the reason I have those up there is because like, I feel like I've done a little bit at work with it, but not that much. So then like when I started trying to set this up for my project, I was kind of like, oh, this is a little harder than I thought because I've like never actually really set up DNS. And there were some tutorials, but like because I was using meme.com, like I really could not find specific tutorials for that. So I kind of had to read some tutorials and kind of like figure out what worked for me. Was eventually able to get it working and learn a lot in the process. But it was kind of like, another really good reason to start projects from the beginning sometimes. Also responsive design, because everybody has a different, tablet, phone, browser, and trying to make my design like incorporate all those things. Not that easy at all. Right, so some lessons I learned while trying to get this started. So it took me over 8 months to make that launch page. And I probably had a version ready at month 1, but like I was not happy with it. So I was like, no, I'm gonna keep changing this and keep doing this, keep doing this. And finally, one of my teammates is like, you have something. You have, like, he set a deadline. He's like, I'm giving you the weekend and you must like deploy this by Monday. Otherwise I'm quitting. Like, okay, all right. So, and just kind of like how I talked about simple design, like now that I think about it, I really should have like just deployed at month 1 and just like as I iterated on design, then keep deploying. So that's kind of what I should have done now that I think about it. But at that time I'm like, no, this must be perfect. All right, another thing is build your support system. So when, like I said, when I first started coming up, when I first had this idea, I talked to everybody because I was super excited about it. And while doing that, like a lot of people were super encouraging. A lot of people wanted to help me. My like current teammates were like, they were the reason that I got started. So if it wasn't for me talking to people and kind of like establishing that support system, I probably, to this day, I would have not started. I would have kept talking about it. This slide is probably more for me than for anybody. So you won't know how to do everything, and that's okay. I mean, in my day-to-day at tech, like I'm used to like the idea of not knowing everything, and I'm totally okay with, well, mostly you're okay with it because you have Google, you have your teammates, like you pair program, so you'll figure it out. But for me, for some reason, I was just like, I'm not gonna know how to do this stuff. Some of this, I'm scared, and but kind of like it helped like to have a team, like to have that like. If I'm stuck on anything, like I have a sounding board, I can get technical advice. I can get help and it's okay. So, all right. So I have learned a lot in my first year of getting this thing started. So I would say for those of you that have an idea, like just start. Get started. And that is it. Thank you.